Hello and welcome to Penguin TV. It is recorded by George Ephelis, aka Whiffy Penguin, and you can follow me on Twitter at Whiffy Penguin. Penguin TV is hosted by PureMTGO.com and sponsored by MTGOTraders.com. Get an 8% discount off all orders over $50 when paying with PayPal or credit card. And you can check out CapeFearGames.com and get an extra 20% off when trading paper for digital. Enjoy the videos. Hello, we're back with another Penguin TV. This time, the deck in question is workshop-based Affinity. So I thought that we would just take a quick look at the mana base and see what's going on here. We've got a Singleton City of Traders, 4 Ancient Tombs, a Tolarian Academy, 4 Workshops, and a Gaia's Cradle, all which help produce buckets of mana for us to go nutso on turn 1 and 2. Rounding that out, our land is supplemented with 3 Wastelands, a Strip Mine, and then 2 Mishra's Factories. Mishra's Factory it's a good card. I don't see why we wouldn't play it. And the Strip Mine Wastelands are also pretty good. But one thing I want to get into before we get really far into the deck is that this is a pretty budget deck. Pete Yan on State of the Union priced out the deck at about 385 tickets to build from scratch, and you could easily cut these 3 Wastelands for 3 Ghost Quarters in this deck and achieve pretty much the same results that you would otherwise. You could also cut the City of Traders and add a second Gaia's Cradle or second Tolarian Academy, which is cheaper than the City of Traders. But yeah, so that's our mana base. And then the deck really has 4 different engines going on in it. And all of them are supplemented by the acceleration. So let's look at the different here's the acceleration. We've got the Mana Crypt, Mana Vault, and Sol Ring, as well as 2 Mox Opals to help us get more than 2 or 3 mana on turn 1. We also have 5 zero-cost artifact creatures. And we have the 4 Frogmites, which have Affinity, and usually they end up costing about 1 if you're playing it on turn 1 or turn 2. But so this is how all these different engines work. So the first engine is Genesis Chamber. Now, with all of the free creatures, you can run this out on turn 1 pretty easily, since most of your lands tap for 2 mana, and follow it up with Memnites and Frogmites, or possibly Signal Pests, and get lots of 1/1 artifact token creatures. This has cross-synergy with every other engine in the deck as well. The whole deck is just incredibly synergistic. Following up the Genesis Chamber, we have Arcbound Ravager, which allows you to, get in when they have blockers, or turn off Bridge from Belows in the main deck. That's a pretty big thing. But just having the ability to, on turn 2 or 3, sacrifice your board to deal lethal damage is also very good. And the deck is capable of spitting out a ridiculous number of artifacts in the first few turns. Here we have Steel Overseer, which is really the slowest engine. This is the I'm going to fight fair, where you lay out a couple of guys and then pump them up by 1 each turn. It can get out of control, but it is definitely the slowest of the engines. And then we have Signal Pest, which can really be one of the most busted. I think that the most busted turn you can make, or most busted play you can make with the deck, is probably turn 1 Genesis Chamber, Signal Pest, Memnite, Frogmite, turn 2 attack for like 7 damage, and then start doing crazy things with whatever else you have. So Signal Pest is really good, and Signal Pest is a great card to receive the boon from Arcbound Ravager, since it can only be blocked by flyers. Following up the 4 I'm going to win, we have our card advantage, and Skull Clamp is a pretty decent card in this deck. Mishra's Workshops don't really help the Skull Clamp, but we do have all of this artifact mana and then all of these other lands. When you get a Skull Clamp going and a Genesis Chamber, Tolarian Academy and Guy's Cradle just pretty much win you the game because you can sit there and draw like 10 cards. And also craft a superior board state. Memory Jar, I don't think I ever actually got to resolve this in the event, but it was good to have since this deck definitely can lose its entire hand on turn 1 and 2, and being able to refill is amazing. Over here we have our utility guys. Lodestone Golem makes perfect sense in the deck. It's still a very good turn 1 or turn 2 play against the field, and it doesn't really interact poorly with us in the slightest, since our deck is lands and artifacts. And then Phyrexian Revoker is another card that just makes sense to play. It's a 2-drop, it's an artifact creature, it attacks, and it turns off problematic cards, like Goblin Welder or other such things. One thing I will say about this deck is that it looks like it's a dog to Oath of Druids. But other than that, it can erase pretty much everything except for Storm. Storm is probably faster than this deck is, but it's also being suppressed by Workshop decks. So when we look at our sideboard, we see 4 Leyline of the Void and 4 Ensnaring Bridge, which all come in against Dredge. And the Ensnaring Bridges also come in against Oath of Druids. It's hard for them to attack you with their cards when they can't attack. It's just rough. Although they will have Ancient Grudges and Nature's Claims. So this is not a definitive answer to Oath of Druids. We've got Dismember coming up next, and that is primarily for all of the fish decks and all of the Delver of Secret type decks. But really, what it boils down to is killing Phyrexian Revokers, Qasali Pride Mages. And then we've got 3 Thorn of Amethyst, which is kind of like a shout out to, hey, if there's a Storm matchup, I need to be prepared. I like the deck a lot. It played really aggressively. I was thinking that it might need another land, and I was thinking possibly adding a second Tolarian Academy instead of this Ornithopter, which I don't really like. Cutting the Ornithopter still leaves us with 28 creatures, and then going up to 18 lands seems better than staying at 17, especially when the land you add is a Tolarian Academy. That's it for this one. I'll see you guys for round 1.